Well, good morning, and welcome to part two of our deep dive into our study of the book of Revelation. Today, we're going to be looking at the second church of Revelation, and this is the church of Smyrna. And to give some background information of Smyrna, we find that Smyrna, its name means myrrh, and that comes from the root word bitter. Um, and while it might have tasted bitter, it seems to have smelled pretty good because myrrh was used for perfumes and for the making of incense. And then these items were often used in burials, in the, embalming the body, covering the body in perfumes and oils to make things smell fairly good. Smyrna was also a commercial rival of Ephesus. Think Target versus Walmart. And they had a huge three-level market plaza. And so it was fairly clear that Smyrna was well off financially. And yet the Christian church there in Smyrna was having a bit of a different experience. We read about this in Revelation chapter 2, verse 9, where Jesus has this to say in his message to the Smyrna Christians. I know your works, tribulation and poverty, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Something is going on here, right? Here is this rich community, and yet the Christians within it, their bank accounts are not that big. But Jesus says, even though you are poor in this wealthy surroundings, you actually are wealthy because you have true wealth. You have spiritual riches. But there's something else here in this verse, isn't there? Jesus talks about this synagogue of Satan. So we see here that there's this group of two-faced people. They were a group that claimed to be spiritual Jews. They claimed to worship God and be good, upright, moral people. But their actions and how they opposed these Christians in Smyrna, they revealed that they were spiritually evil, that they weren't followers of God, that in fact they were followers of Satan. And so this was not good news for the Smyrna Christians. They were fighting against poverty. They were fighting against these people, the synagogue of Satan that seemed to have it out for them. And then Jesus says, things are actually going to kind of get a bit worse. In Revelation chapter 2, verse 10, Jesus says, do not fear any of those things which you are about to suffer. Indeed, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested. And you will have tribulation for 10 days, but be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. Some encouraging words from Jesus. Even though the circumstances were going to be difficult, Jesus promises a crown of life. Jesus is saying you need to be prepared because Satan is about to attack. The devil is about to fling his fiery arrows at you, probably aided by those people in that group or the people in the synagogue of Satan. But Jesus says, hold on, endure this difficult season, and I will give you eternal life. And he doesn't just stop there, though. In fact, he makes this promise even more clear in the following verse, verse 11, when he says, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who overcomes shall not be hurt by the second death. Because yes, you might have to endure the first death. You might have to make use of those myrrh-based incense and perfumes. But you will not have to be hurt by that second death. I will resurrect you for eternal life. And that is the most powerful promise of all. And so when we look at this church in the historicism perspective of looking at how these churches represent the various eras of the Christian church, we see that this second church, the Church of Smyrna, represents the second era of the Christian church, which lasted between 100 AD and 313 AD. And it was during this period that several heretical teachings began to pop up. There were groups that claimed to be faithful followers of Christ, yet they taught things that twisted the gospel, that were actually antithetical or against the true nature of Christ's teachings. For example, we know that it was during this period when the Gnostics rose up, and they taught that we were saved by finding secret knowledge. Jesus was helpful in us obtaining that secret knowledge, but it was that secret knowledge that actually led to eternal life, that led to salvation, that led to a higher plane of existence. There were also the Docetists, who taught that Jesus didn't really come physically. He came as a spiritual being, but there was no flesh and blood involved. And so they really, at the heart, were denying the true nature of the atonement sacrifice. And to mingle with these heresies, there was an intense period of persecution, especially towards the beginning of this era of the Smyrna era of the church. This was when the Roman Emperor Diocletian came to power, and he ushered in a severe persecution. For the first time in Christian history, there was an intense, sustained period of persecution. Under Diocletian's rule, historians estimate that between 3,000 and 3,500 Christians were executed by his authority. It was not a good time to be a Christian. You know, I am thankful, though, that here in the United States, Christians are not being executed. But I know that it is not always easy to be a Christian. Perhaps your faith has cost you some things. Maybe you've lost out on some jobs, some work, some finances. Perhaps you have lost out on some relationships. Maybe you have lost status in some form or another because of your faith. But Jesus encourages us through the experiences of this church in Smyrna to hold on, to endure the hardships that we might face because of the sake of Christ. And if we do, if we endure those difficulties for his sake, he has promised to give us a crown of eternal life. I know that I want to wear that crown someday, and I hope you do as well. Thank you for watching, and God bless.